They say children are supposed to be protected, cherished, safe. But some of us, we learn early that safety is a luxury and our worth, it's negotiable. Welcome to From Abuse to Abundance. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is chapter 4, The Prop, the Predator, the Prey. This isn't a story about a mother's love. This is a story about survival, about a little girl turned human bait, transformed into a living, breathing recruitment tool in her mother's desperate hunt for male validation. Imagine being small enough to understand that your entire purpose is to make someone else more desirable, to be the sparkle in her eye, the charm that turns heads, the social lubricant that might, just might, bring her the connection she's been striving for. I wasn't a daughter in those moments. I was a strategy, a prop, a wing child, and an endless audition for love. And before we get into this episode, I do need to give a trigger warning. This episode contains mentions of childhood sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and narcissistic abuse. And this could be triggering for people, even unexpectedly, as it is incredibly common that if you have had trauma, you can bury it so below the surface that you don't even have memories in your childhood or you have fragmented memories. And sometimes when we hear someone else's story, if there's similarities, it can ping something inside of you. And if it does ping it, just trust that it's supposed to come up. Our brain is a fascinating mechanism that actually protects us. And when things come up and memories surface, they're supposed to come up because it's time and it's safe for you to process them through your system. So if you're in the US, a great place for support is the RAIN National Sexual Assault Hotline. It's available 24/7 at 1-800-656-HOPE. You can swipe up. That is right in the show notes. Since we have incredible millions of listeners all over the world, you can Google any of the international support hotlines in your community, in your area for help, and know that there is help. You are not alone. Please do not go through this alone. You won't make it out alive. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. Just while I was getting familiar with my role as playing Adam's girlfriend, while also playing this is my big brother act for the rest of the world, I got thrown in to yet another new role that I had to keep track of and I had to play. And the Adam thing, I felt I had down. Give him what he wants when he wants it, check out in order for me to be able to get the attention, to be able to get to escape my mom. He always had an eye on me. What a delight for a pedophile. Her business was in the home. He worked for her. I'm an only child. Both of my parents are only children. It's not like there's family coming and going. And my mom knew it was all happening. So anyone who maybe even said something, and as far as I know, the only person who did say something was my granny nanny at some point, and she was quickly shut up. But I definitely know she was an angel lurking around, like she made Adam's access less easy for him, which he didn't like. So then there were lies made up about her. There were things that were said to my mom in order to get my mom to not like her. And my mom already had an issue with her anyway, because anyone who was overweight was considered like the scum of the earth to her. Like she immediately looked down on anyone who even had like 10 extra pounds on them for the most part, right? Which that was a whole nother thing that I had to also manage in my mind, that I knew I had to maintain a certain look in order for it to make her look good. And so I had all of that swirling around. And forgive me when you're hearing some of this coming up in fragmented spurts, because while I do have memories, I also have these dead spots. And so it might seem like I'm kind of jumping, but they really do all tie in together. And it's important for you to hear me doing that, especially if you're a fellow survivor, because then you know that this is normal. This is part of it. This is what happens. If your ass doesn't remember your childhood or you have a lot of holes in it, I'm telling you, you've gone through some form of trauma. Because why would you forget something unless you have like some other cognitive issue or learning disability? So I knew with him, I had to give him what he wanted. I knew the role that I had to play. And in order for me to get the love, attention, and affection that I did want from him, and I loved that he took me out of the house. I mean, it was way more fun, even with the role I had to play, being with him, than it was being with my mom. I actually could be myself with him. And I know that sounds weird. It's like I could be myself, not really, but I could be more of myself with him, and I felt more free, which I think that paints a pretty remarkable picture when you think about it. I felt more free with the person regularly abusing me than my own mom. And her addiction to male attention went to a peak state in middle school. I am talking insatiable. Maybe it is because it's been, several years since her last marriage. Her business was getting more and more successful. It could have been that she was, my guess is when I do the math, she was approaching 50, because my mom had me later in life. She had me at 37. And I'm sure that messed with her head. Who knows? But it was in full force. And so I would end up as her wing woman, her wing child. We would go to places that you would not bring a child, and there were no other children in there. And she would pick my outfit, which wasn't a very like adult looking outfit, like something maybe like a college girl would wear. And we would go into these lounges. We would go to like high-end bars, because she wasn't going to be, in some like low-end place. And how she kind of appeased me when we were there was doing the whole like adult thing, right? Like, you're such an adult, like, basically you get to be here in all these interesting, unusual places that there's no other kids here, because most parents, they don't know how to raise their kids. And, you're so mature and you have more sophisticated tastes, and you'll try all the foods. And she would order like sweet alcoholic beverages for me. So they were almost like, like those dessert type drinks, which of course tasted amazing to me, like Baileys and cream, like that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, looking back, that is not okay. Like, that's wild. I mean, one sense I was raised more in a European way, where there was like like you were having some wine with dinner and that wasn't unusual. So like There's that line, but this line went to a whole nother level. And let me add that I was clearly sipping on these things and drinking these things in front of bartenders, in front of waitresses, and no one said a word. And I was so hyper vigilant. No one even, I felt, gave side eyes, glances. In fact, it was the opposite. So we would be sitting there. I wish I remembered the name of this place. It doesn't exist anymore. They were famous for this ice cream concoction that's done with alcohol called a Brandy Alexander. And that was one of the ways like she would like entice me to go. Not that I had a choice. I mean, I was never allowed to say no, like, period. But it was like almost like her way of like, just like what Adam did. It's a groomer's technique, right? You're getting frozen yogurt. I'm buying you Legos. You're going to a concert. You know, I get to have a treat. I get to have, it was like soft serve ice cream, but like doused in brandy. And given that she's anorexic and I'm getting to have a sweet treat, like, and not being criticized for it, it was amazing. And my mom was in a great mood when we would go out and do these things. There was another restaurant chain called Ed DeBevick's that was, it was like a very trendy, I think it was like a 60s diner vibe. There was a Mexican place. There were quite a few places we would go where this would be my role. And literally every time we went, there would be drinks sent to the table. The waitress would come over with like a piece of paper or with a business card of a guy's phone number. The guy would come up to the table. Like, this was before texting. So this was before like that level of technology. So you actually like really had to come up to people, and they would. And if they didn't, or it was taking too long, the ante would be upped. I would be sent to the bathroom. So like I knew going to the bathroom wasn't for me to go wash my hands in the bathroom. It was for me to sashay myself, parade myself to the bathroom, past the bar, past the area with all the men, because it would get their attention. And then they would watch where I was sitting back down, which was with her. So I was used as that bait. And I was aware of it. And I knew it was my role. And there was part of me that felt like, you know, well, I'm a big girl, I'm a grown up. Like, I get to do this, and then this makes my mom happy. So of course I wanted to do it because I wanted her to be happy. You know, it'd be like, no, it was really no different than if she was a cocaine addict and I was able to score her cocaine because it would make her happy. I would have done the same thing. This was really her drug. And she would just be like thrilled when it would happen. I would watch her manipulate the men. She would do the batting of the eyes. I mean, she had all the moves and knew exactly what to do. There were times where I was not her daughter, I was her sister. I didn't know how old my mom was officially, I believe, until I got a copy of my birth certificate, because her age always changed. Like, I couldn't even keep track of it. And because my mom is like very well kept and attractive and so petite, she looked amazing for her age. And because of how I was being dressed and sexualized, it wasn't that, it was still kind of passable that I could have been a sister with like, you know, like a significant gap. And I was portrayed as that. I did think that was weird, but I wasn't going to question that. I wasn't allowed to question anything. And then, you know, when these guys would end up coming to the house, or they would come to the house and my mom would cook them dinner, that was a move of hers, because I've told you in other chapters, you know, she truly is an excellent cook. And they would just be floored, right? Here, they're, imagine the guy is coming over to a house that's like a big ass baller house, and where there's a business being run out of it with a very attractive woman who, is, on top of the world living life, and she's cooking you gourmet food, and she would like take out, she would put on the full court press. She wasn't doing some spaghetti dinner over here. And she would never tell me when a guy was coming over, at least that I can recall. And maybe I'd be in my room doing homework, or maybe I was at like dance class and I was coming back. So remember, Adam was my driver. Thank you. And then I would see that there's a new gentleman sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner, and I am to eat dinner with them. And it was always awkward. It was like so weird that it's like, who is this guy? It was almost like my mom didn't want me to know it was another guy. Like she wanted me to like kind of think, oh, this could be like a a business client, or who the hell knows who it is. And I remember in particular this one moment, and the hallway, like the grand foyer, and I'm dead ass. That's what it was called. The grand foyer, when you walk from like the wing that had the bedrooms to the kitchen that was the upstairs kitchen, you could see one of the chairs, and that was the chair typically these men sat in as I was walking towards the kitchen. And I remember seeing this guy, and it was like this guy looked different than the other guys. And he wasn't a black man. He wasn't an Asian man. It was something I'd not been exposed to. And keep in mind, we had all flavors of everything all around us at all times, which is one of the beautiful things about my mom, genuinely, is that like everyone was included, and there was no like discussion, no shade, no microaggressions, nothing towards like someone's race, their weight. That was another story. Okay. Or if they were not educated, or my mom was threatened by them, then there would be something about their looks or intellect or how much money they didn't have that would come up, but it was never about the color of someone's skin or their race or anything like that. And this guy just looked different. I wasn't exposed to it. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And at that age in middle school, I had a lot of swearing going on in my head. Like, and I learned all like the swearing and being able to express it that way from Adam. And one of the things I loved about going out with him is that I could swear, I could talk shit about my mom, I could vent about my mom, and he would agree with me and listen to me. And he would have inside jokes about my mom, and he would like roll his eyes behind her back. Like I felt like I had an advocate. Okay. So, and this is my point in saying that is this is where like my love of swearing probably came in, because for someone who wasn't allowed to express, and I wasn't allowed to certainly express my dismay, my frustration, my anger, I had it going on in my head. And in my head it was like, what the fuck, who the fuck is this? Like, oh no, here's another fucking guy. And I knew I had to like, put together my part. I had to get into my role. And I was wearing like a shirt that would easily like fall off the shoulder. And at that point, starting in sixth grade, I was wearing what people used to call, I don't even know if they call them this anymore. They called them like training bras. So like I was wearing like a small bra at that point, and you could see the strap of the bra, when the thing fell off my shoulder. Um, and this guy I remember had a weird demeanor, he had an accent, and my mom was saying he was some kind of a prince. And I knew this motherfucker wasn't a prince, okay? Like this guy was not a prince. I mean, I just knew it. I was like, but he was probably telling her He was a prince. And she wanted me to be very impressed that there was a prince having dinner in our home. So I had to go along with it. And I remember him looking me up and down like he was studying me. He was not looking at me as like a child. He was looking at me as something like he could purchase. And I was very fucking uncomfortable. Like it felt like my insides were frozen. And I was nodding my head and doing all the polite things. And all of a sudden, my mom snapped my bra strap in the back. I'm talking like pulled it way back really quick and snapped it to where it stung. And I was like, so obviously, I was already a child who flinched easily for obvious reasons. But I was like so stunned and humiliated, and I might have said something. I can't remember. I might have been in my head, like, why'd you do that? And she was like going, is talking about my breasts to him. And, like, aren't they so cute? And was talking about like me like that while I'm standing there. And by the way, they're both sitting. And I was probably bright red. I was filled with so much shame. I was humiliated. And I don't remember anything after that of that night. I'll put it to you like that. I literally remember nothing. I'm assuming I blacked out from whatever occurred after that. And I was like, okay, well, this is a new role. And she would use me as leverage to get these guys. It was like these guys wanted access to me, or they saw it as a package deal. They were intrigued by it, these disgusting motherfuckers. And so she would kind of use that in order to get them and get whatever she wanted from them, their attention, their supply, whatever it was that she needed. And I got to tell you, it worked. This episode is sponsored by my Make More, Work Less Money and Manifestation course. If you want to get to the root of your money stuff and why things happen the way they happen with your money life and what is blocking you from your ultimate abundance so that you can release that, so you can manifest everything that you want, this program is for you. It comes with several modules of me taking you through it. And you also get my very well-known, people love the guided workbook that comes with it. It's 87 pages. And this program is designed for you to clear those money wounds. We get to do this in a way that feels fun, that feels safe, that feels supportive. And if I were to tell you to invest your money in anything right now, if you constantly are feeling like things aren't working, you'll launch stuff and people aren't buying, or you get a little bit ahead, but not way ahead, and you feel like you're trading all of your time for money and you don't want to have that life anymore. You truly want to build that wealth mindset, but you're not sure how to get there. This is the program for you. And right now, I have an abundance sale going on. You get $200 off plus you get my brand new 90-day guided abundance journal and planner for free when you buy this course. So all you need to do is go to projectmewithtiffany.com/make more work less. You can swipe up. I have it inside the show notes. I also have it here on Project Me TV on YouTube in the description. And for a limited time, it's in my link in bio on Instagram and TikTok at Project Me TV. Let me redo the last part because I fucked it up. And for a limited time, it's in my link in bio on Instagram and TikTok at Project Me with Tiffany. It was around the same time that I started getting a little more sassy, a little more feisty, not as agreeable with Adam, even probably like physical wise, as I was, rapidly approaching or even going through puberty. There were changes going on with me, and he sensed it. And this is when he would, under the guise of being a fun and playful brother, would grab me, hold me so I couldn't get away, and force crack my knuckles. Now, I crack my knuckles all the time now. I love cracking all my body parts now. But when you've never if you've ever had a body part cracked, and I don't mean by like a professional, but if you've ever like gone to crack a knuckle or someone's cracks thing for you and it can really, really hurt, like it's not wanting to release, that's how that felt because I was not, used to having that done. And I didn't know that that was like a thing. So it was also very scary. I thought my fingers were being broken. So he would grab me, force crack my knuckles. Of course, he did like the aggressive tickling. I fucking hate being tickled to this day. Hate, 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 hate. Not a fan, not approved, not into it, not cute. And it would be pretty aggressive. And so he was putting me in my place, making sure that I knew how fucking strong he was. And he was strong. This was not like a petite person. In fact, he was like, he wasn't in like amazing shape or anything, but he was like a thicker person. And even though I was like the tallest in my school and I was like doing competitive dance, so like I was athletic myself, I could have never fought him off. And I knew that. And he would pin me down and like tickle me. And like I'd have to say things for him to release me, like where I was almost going to pee myself. So this is how he made sure I knew, without even saying anything, you best like stay in line and you best be aware that I have like full control over you. Seventh grade was absolutely miserable for me. If I look back at like my entire, schooling of what was the most traumatizing year, it was seventh grade and in middle school. So that made me like around 12 years old. I had so many roles to play, as now you probably not even able to keep track of the roles I'm sharing with you. Plus, my mom was dead ass set on me being a model and a childhood actor. I did not ask to do this. Now, I did love dance. I loved theater. I did like that stuff. I knew I couldn't sing. I'm well aware that I can't sing still. And I did like probably like that escape of all of that. But I know I didn't ask to be going on auditions and stuff. And she just really ran with it. I know there are people who did say stuff to her, but I just thought they were saying it just to kiss her ass, which of course she loved. Your daughter's so beautiful. She should be a model, because keep in mind, I was unusually tall for that age. And I was also very poised and sexualized in how I carried myself, which is what people are taught, sadly, about, childhood models when you go to really think about it. I mean, look at like these pageant kids that are wearing like a full face of makeup and shit. And it's like, so I was, getting that constant reinforcement, which I liked the compliment, not so much for me, but I knew it made my mom happy to get that compliment. So then she started like agent shopping for me. I had to go and get like I think they were called a modeling composite shots. I don't know if that's what they're still called. Basically, you have a headshot, but then you have to have a portfolio to show on when you go on like casting calls and stuff. And I fucking hated it. I didn't like having my picture taken. My mom made sure she was there. And this is a woman who was very busy in many areas of her life. Yet she took the time to take me to all these auditions, take me to these meetings, these incredibly long and exhausting photography shoots that I was not into whatsoever. I had no self-worth. I didn't want it. So it wasn't playful or fun for me. So I was acting, and those kind of pictures don't really translate, and I'm sure the shoot went on for a long time because these photographers are trying to get, certain types of shots out of me. And I would just be so freaking tired because it's another performance, and it's a performance I did not want to do. I was tired of fucking performing. That was the last thing that I wanted to do. But it was interesting how much time she had for me, even while running a business. I mean, this woman has literally limitless energy. It's quite fascinating. And her energy certainly does not come from food, it comes from all the external validation. Like, she's high on that supply. And I got in a famous magazine at the time. And at that time were all those like teen magazines. Some of you remember the magazine like Sassy, YM, and then there was all those magazines that you would have like all like the pop stars, like teen pop. And like in the center there would be like a poster, and you could literally take it out of the magazine and undo it and have a wall poster of like a Backstreet Boy or some shit. It was like that time period. And I got in to, I believe it was called Teen Magazine. I don't remember. I got in it. And I also was up for a part in the show Wonder Years. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may not. You can look it up if you find this interesting. And I got like several callbacks for this. Now, I didn't run around telling people this shit in school. I knew not to tell people stuff, but I was getting pulled out of school regularly to go on these auditions. And my mom wanted people to know I was being pulled out to go on auditions, right? Like, because that gets her more attention. I was not looking for more attention. And this did not go over well with my classmates whatsoever. And on top of it, I already was highly promiscuous starting in 6th grade when the sexual abuse started with me. Now, if there was sexual abuse happening to me before that, I have no recollection of it. So I was already, there was lots of kissing of lots of boys. I believe there were lots of hand jobs. I even think I gave a blowjob in 6th grade. I'm being dead ass about it. And I remember being very confused why there was no white stuff that came out. And like feeling like I didn't do my job to please this person and what I'm supposed to do because there was no white stuff, and being very worried about it. You would be in the back of the bus and there would be hands down pants. I mean, this is what went on. And I was not the only one doing it. I mean, there were a handful of us. It certainly wasn't as sadly normalized as it is now, which freaks me the hell out, the stories I've heard from teachers. So it wasn't just me. So that made it feel more normal to me that it wasn't just me. But I definitely was the most, which makes sense. So I started getting referred to as a slut and bullied for it. And I went to the bathroom in my middle school in 7th grade, and someone had taken like, a pen or something and scraped Tiffany is a slut on the wall. There was Tiffany is a slut even in a main school hallway. Someone wrote it in marker really big. I mean, it was relentless and happening often. And I was really humiliated. I didn't know what to do to stop it. I couldn't go to my mom with this. What was she going to do? And I didn't want to get in trouble for it. People would egg my house, toilet paper my house, and then I would get in trouble for it, and I would have to clean it all up myself. And cleaning up toilet paper after it's also rained or there's snow outside, let me tell you, this is an insane task for a 12-year-old to do on their own. cleaning off egg off of a driveway in people's cars when it's warm in the summer. Also not fun. And I was blamed for all of it. And I was being punished for being slut shamed. Oh, and there was shaving cream on the driveway that said slut. I mean, it was happening that often. And so I had to show up to school. I had to stuff it. I had to somehow make sure that I got good enough grades to not get in trouble. My grades were not great in middle school, as you can imagine. I mean, they weren't. And I was in trouble for it a lot of time. I was holding on by a thread. Then I had all my roles that I had to play at home. I was exhausted, and these kids did not like the modeling thing. That's what really set them off. So then I hated the whole modeling and acting thing. And I remember I went for the final callback for this part, and it was of the French foreign exchange student part for Wonder Years. And the girl who got the part, it makes sense. Like, we looked very similar. I had blonde hair. My hair was naturally blonde, and then it turned brown slowly as older that I got. And you had to speak in French and introduce, like, this monologue was in French. And my mom made me take French in school. She said that was like the sophisticated language to take. It's like, okay, well, I mean, listen, I don't have a problem with French, but like, it would be a lot more helpful if I was as well versed in Spanish. But I digress. And I had this memorized. I mean, I practice and practice and practice. Now, those of you who are familiar with complex PTSD, it is very difficult to memorize things and retain things when you are dealing with that. And so I had to study harder than everyone else and longer and really focus. And same with this. And I was absolutely being ridiculed for leaving school yet again for this audition. And I froze and nothing came out of my mouth. I couldn't do it. And I could recite some of it today. Je habite dans la Cité de Léon et le sud de France. Je voyage beaucoup avec mon père. Something like that. I can remember it now. That's how much I know I botched that. My French speaking people. But that is how much I studied it, is that I can even recite it now. And I botched it. And my mom said nothing to me the entire way home. But part of me was relieved because I didn't have it in me to do that role. I just didn't have it in me. I didn't want to have to do it. And I knew I disappointed her. And I was very worried about how I was going to pay the price for it, but couldn't do it. I was dealing with that at school. And so no one ever talked to me about anything that was going on at school. I mean, the teachers fucking knew. I mean, it was bad. And I don't know if they talked to my mom about it and she just never talked to me about it. But like, what was she going to say? She knew why I was likely being referred to as that, right? I mean, like, obviously, she knew everything that was going on. So there was nothing said. It was the ultimate secret. And as I was getting closer and closer to 8th grade, all of my friends all got their periods and I did not. And it was really weird because it was like glaringly obvious how much more developed I was than all my friends. I was by far the tallest in the class. Like, I had the boobs, the whole deal. And I would lie. And like, when they'd be like, oh, I have cramps, like that kind of stuff. Like, I would just kind of like go along with it. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder if there's like something wrong with me, why I don't have it. And I knew I couldn't go to my mom and ask her. Like, I just knew. I don't know any other way to say it. And I had no one else to fucking go to. So I was stuffing that inside, thinking something was wrong with me. Like, and who knew? I'm sure that, not that it's abnormal to end up getting your period later, but I'm sure the stress had something to do with it that was going on and me being in fight or flight. Once I did get my period and Adam knew that I had my period, there was this dynamic change. That is when I believe he stopped abusing me nightly in the same way. I mean, God forbid. That's not what a pedophile wants. They don't want a woman who has their period, and they certainly don't want to get you pregnant. So there was this weird shift, and I was very worried about the shift. In fact, it made me, and I know there's a psychological term for it, it made me basically like kiss his ass and give him extra attention because I could tell like he pulled away and he wasn't as like interested and delighted and excited to be around me. And I didn't want to lose that. And so like I would even then do things I saw my mom doing in terms of like being flirtatious and stuff like that. I remember doing a lot of that to make sure that like he stayed interested in enough so that I could at least get the attention that I wanted from him and be, taken out of the house and to concerts and so that he would be nice to me. But there was without a doubt a shift. And I didn't tell my mom. I don't think I told my mom I had my period, or maybe I did say something. And I remember all she said was, "There's stuff under my kitchen sink for you, or under my bathroom sink for you." And I was like, okay, I literally knew nothing. Like, I'm sure I had sex ed, but I was totally dissociated in sex education in middle school for obvious reasons. And my guess is, and I'm sure it's still an issue now, they don't teach you in depth about your female body parts and ovulation. So I saw she had like Playtex tampons, and I knew what those like little packs look like because I saw my friends at school have them. And so I took it out and I did not see any like clear instructions. Like I read the instructions, but there weren't like any clear like pictures or diagrams. Like I really didn't understand how to use it. And I was like, well, I guess you just like stick it in there. And so how I wore a tampon, I'm telling you, for most of eighth grade and through most of my freshman year of high school, was I had the full applicator in the entire time, like the full thing in. I did not know that was supposed to come out. So you can imagine how painful that was. And the bottom of like the applicator thingy would stick out. And like when I would go to sit down or it hit my jeans, it would like jam up further inside of me and it would be so uncomfortable. And I go, this must be what all of my friends have been complaining about, having cramps and hating their period and like bleeding through their tampons and stuff. Cause obviously I bled through it because the blood, not much of the blood could get to the cotton. And you're probably like, this is way more information than I needed to know. But like, this is pretty traumatizing. And I think it's important to paint the picture of how much neglect there was and how it's not like I had some family friend to go to, like some confidant or my grandmother. I mean, when they came to visit, my grandparents were like super, super conservative. I mean, especially my grandmother. There was no way would I talk to her about any of that stuff. And I remember when there was one of those reprieve periods in middle school. I was in eighth grade. And I know I already had my period at this point. So that's why I know it was eighth grade. So I was 13. And it was a reprieve. It was like my mom must have had, she was taking a break from men, or either she was being satiated or getting enough attention from them. So we weren't like having to go out and like hit the lounges or anything like that. I had a break from Adam because I newly had my period. So I kind of didn't know what to do with myself. I was used to having a role and being of service regularly, day and night. So I had some extra time on my hands. This is some dark humor for you. Oh, God. And I had these pink and white striped super soft pajamas that were my favorite. And they were, of course, like I was 13. I mean, I would wear them today, absolutely. But I mean, I when I even just like said that, I'm like, is that cringe? Like, was that cringy? I wore those? No, I was fucking 13. Of course, I was gonna have cute pink, white striped pajamas. Anyway, so I remember having those on, and there was cable in the family room and in my mom's bedroom. I didn't have cable in my room. And so I was allowed to go watch cable on the floor of my mom's room because in the family room, there were people traipsing in and out of the house constantly. And my mom didn't want potential clients or employees seeing me sitting there on the couch eating a snack, watching Nickelodeon, while they're coming in and out of the house. So I would be on the floor of her bedroom watching shows, and often had the door closed, and that wasn't a weird thing because again it was like so no one could hear the TV, blah 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 blah. And I loved it. I loved being able to watch TV. I still love TV. what a that was a great escape for me. TV, I could escape into the different shows. I loved being able to have control of changing the channel, of being able to watch what I wanted to watch. It was so good. I mean, I thank God for TV. It saved my life, really. It saved my life because it gave me a reprieve. It gave me an escape. Books weren't going to cut it. That because I had too hard of a time retaining information. That wasn't going to be enough for me. Anyway, so I'm sitting on the floor watching a show, and I actually remember having a feeling of like peace. I wasn't worried someone was going to come in. I wasn't even worried my mom was going to come in and yell at me. It felt like my body could finally rest. And like what has happened over and over and over again growing up is as soon as I felt I had a reprieve, as soon as I felt I could exhale, as soon as I felt I could rest, I would get side whacked. And I heard people talking, and I heard my mom, and we know I was hyper vigilant. So if I heard her talking to someone, I wanted to know what the hell was going on at all times in that house for my safety. So I remember muting the TV, and I cracked open the bedroom door so I could see what was like and hear what was going on. And I heard my mom talking to her, what she referred to as was her best friend, who I was told to call Auntie Marcia, which again, very, I mean, it's not weird. I mean, like, I get like, you could like a really close, girlfriend. I could see that I would call her Auntie Marcia, and I liked calling her that, and I liked her. And it was her son who was kind of like seen as being like my cousin. Okay. And I played with Todd regularly as a kid and played Legos. I mean, they were boys. There were two of them, and they were older than me. I would say I think when I was 13, I feel like he was 19, but it could have been older. He could have been 21. I don't know. It was somewhere within there, like just less 19 to 21, somewhere in that range. But like I liked him. He was fun. He was cute. And I heard him talking to her, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird that he's here." And I shut the door and I went back to watching TV. And I was like, whatever, like I wasn't thinking anything about it. And then I hear my mom go, "Well, you can just go to my bedroom. She's in there watching TV." And I froze. And I was like, "What the hell?" Because I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to have to put on a show. I also was wearing pink and white striped pajamas. Like I didn't want to see like him dressed like that and like what the hell? And he comes in, and long and the short of it is he shares that he has had a crush on me for some time. Keep in mind, I'm 13 and he's somewhere between 19 and 21. And that my mom gave him permission to ask me out, like on a date. And I was like frozen. Well, I didn't have a fucking option. Like there was no option. And he wasn't even asking me as though there was an option. And I'm not saying he was being even a dick about it, but like there also really wasn't an option. This meant I was going. And I remember feeling like all the blood left my body. I don't remember what I said to him. I'm sure whatever I did, I was agreeable. And I remember being so devastated because here I thought he was like a cousin, like that this was a safe person, just like I thought Adam was like my brother, right? But then he was nice to me and played basketball with me and stuff because he actually cared. And no, it was because he wanted something from me. And that's what happened in this case. Again. And I was like, there, all of it went right back into fight or flight. And I think it was that weekend where he was picking me up to take me on a date and right in front of my mom. And I'm fucking 13 years old. And she was like, have fun. It wasn't like be back in time. It was like, have fun. She probably even gave his ass money. And I was an experienced dater at this point because of all the dates that I had to go on with Adam and all the weird dates that I'd been on like with my mom. But I also was well aware that none of my friends were going out on dates, like not one. So I knew that this was not normal. And I knew that this was not something to share with any of my friends. And he lived somewhere like in a suburb far away and took me to some pizza place to eat. And, you know, I was talking to him. I was happy to be out of the house. I didn't feel any weird vibes. And then he wanted to go to like this park type thing. And I, at this point, was not naive anymore. And I knew likely what was expected to me. Now, he did ask me if he could kiss me. So at least he did ask. And I kind of convinced myself that like I wanted to. I always did think he was cute, right? So I did like kind of convince myself I was into it. And yeah. And then it escalated and it escalated. And I remember, and this is going to get graphic, but I feel I need to tell it. I remember that I was definitely aroused in a different way. Um, like it was like I was truly aroused, like how like an adult woman would be aroused, where I felt like wetness. Okay. And I was definitely attracted to him and I liked what was going on and I didn't feel it was forced. This wasn't Adam, who was literally disgusting looking, a disgusting person. And I remember like having those feelings And then I remember that he tried to have sex with me and he was rather large in size and my body would not allow for this to occur. And I kept saying that I was sorry because I obviously thought I was going to get in trouble or he was mad at me and he did not force me, thank God. He didn't force me. He didn't do anything like that. I didn't say no either, but like it hurt and he didn't want to hurt me. Thank God he didn't want to hurt me because then that would have been a whole nother thing. And I just remember being like, oh my God, like, is he going to say something to my mom that I was like bad? And it was all freaking awkward after that. And I remember it was either the next day or I think it was the next day, I woke up and I got my period. Now, I didn't know it was my period at first. I thought it was because of something that happened with him, but I actually got my period the next day. So I was like dealing with that entire mess. And he did not I don't believe he pursued me after that. Like I don't believe he like didn't see me at all, but something must have woke him up to this is not fucking right to be doing this. I'm hoping that's what happened, but I will tell you this. I never saw Auntie Marcia again. Don't recall. I know I saw him again, but I know like my mom and her must have had some falling out, and there was never an explanation. When my mom discarded somebody, it didn't matter how long they were in my life. There was never an explanation, and I knew I could never ask where the person was or anything, that they were just gone and vanished. And she went away. And I learned from all of this that I was not going to get a reprieve. That just when there was a reprieve, my mom would have a new role. My mom would have someone else or something else that I was required to do. And it never seemed to stop. Before we wrap up this chapter, I want to remind you to get on my Secret Posse weekly digest list. Okay. This is my email community where you get deeply personal emails from me, insights, manifestation tips and tricks, photos directly from my camera roll, content that I don't share anywhere else directly with you. Plus, we have some really exciting things that are coming out, and you get the first dibs, giveaways, sales, offers by being part of the Secret Posse Weekly Digest community. You can get on that by going to projectmewithtiffany.com/secret posse. Swipe up, it's in the show notes, along with my Make More Work Less Money and Manifestation course. So everything is in the show notes for you. You can also go to my link in bio on Instagram and TikTok at Project Me with Tiffany. If you are appreciating me sharing this book with you and you want more chapters, please leave a comment and subscribe on Project Me TV on YouTube. Please take a screenshot of this episode and share it on social media. Share this with someone who you know has been through a lot of stuff, who would likely appreciate hearing a story from abuse to abundance and see how you can go through hell and come out the other side shining so motherfucking bright that nothing gets in your way. And I know that there's been a couple heavy chapters, but in all of this heaviness, there's also a beautiful girl who still juggles it all, who still shows up for herself, who still refuses to be crushed down, who has a will to live and a will to thrive and a will to survive. And that is a will that is innate in all of us. And I had that. And I still have that to this day. And you're going to hear when we go into chapter 5, in a way, how I started taking my power back as I left 8th grade and going into high school, I was thrilled because middle school was terrible and we were getting split between 2 different high schools. And I wanted a fresh start. I did not want to be known as the slut. And I wanted to be able to have something different and leave all of that behind. I had found, a group of like friends that I really enjoyed hanging out with, and I could do things like go to the mall and be distracted. So I was able to find ways to escape and have some fun in spite of everything that was going on. And that's what I mean by like that will that children have, that will that we have to still find a way to even thrive, even in spite of all of it. And I certainly did. And you'll hear how the twists and turns of my high school years really make sense with my personality to this day, and how anger is actually one of our greatest protectors and is one of our greatest assets for fueling us to be able to survive the unsurvivable. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.